school, I pretty much created a per diem practice, which if people don't know is when you cover other attorneys' appearances in court and depositions. And I actually turned that into a pretty profitable experience. So I ended up still keeping that. And then I just kind of was really inspired to help people build their own businesses. I think sometimes people think they need a ton of things to start, and you really don't. You kind of have to take it one step at a time. And my goal is kind of just to help people take those initial steps.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much. So I will go ahead and pause for questions if anyone has any right now. Anyone? Okay, so I'll go ahead and ask one of the pre-submitted questions. And this is, what type of skills do you think are needed to succeed in your type of work? And I love that we have a wide variety of different careers and paths. So I think this is a really good question because you can all answer very differently. So yeah, we can go in the same kind of field that we're going in before.
So practicing immigration law is very interesting these days because it's such a hot topic. So I think to, I don't know, become successful or, you know, build a practice or get into immigration law. And I'm sort of mentoring a young lawyer right now who's wants to go solo, and, you know, she's facing some of the same things I face, motherhood and just having to pay your student loans and all of these different things that we face as young women and young lawyers. You know, and I think my story is unique. I think I'm, I don't know what the right word is, but I guess I'm blessed, and I'm also very lucky to have been born with the name that I was born with, that made my journey just a little bit easier in the community that I opened my office in. But I think 100% you just have to be honest if you're going to practice immigration law. I see so much nonsense and just a lot of very corrupt lawyers, non-lawyers, and bad information floating around. And I think that part of what I've done is establish that I'm going to be honest, whether people like my advice or not. I keep it very straightforward. I keep it very honest. I also think you need to have a lot of compassion. We're dealing with very, very real and human emotions and feelings and families and, you know, just people. And most people are low income. And so I think you have to have compassion and honesty, I guess, in my field. And that's helped me grow. And I just genuinely love what I do. I love the field that I'm in and practicing immigration law. There's nothing better than getting a green card and being able to call clients and say it's here. Or sometimes, I mean, I mess with them and say I'm going to sell it, but obviously I would never do that. But it's just the best feeling in the world to call someone and say, you've got your green card waiting here. So just be honest, I think, if you're trying to get in this field, and, you know, that'll take you a long way.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the compassion. I think being empathetic and really listening to people is probably the most important skill, in my opinion. And acknowledging that you're not going to fully understand your client's experience, because, you know, I've never been evicted and I'm not being evicted. And also, but just, you know, being cognizant of privilege and just like all the systems at play. Yeah, and just, you know, making people feel like they're being heard. I think that's the most important skill. But in terms of, I also just need to mention this because I think this is super important too. There are just more practical skills. Like, you just need to be super organized. I think this applies to any area of law, but like, I just have a million court appearances all the time and a million things to do. And I just need to make sure I write everything down in my calendar so it doesn't slip my mind. I also think in my area of law, specifically housing, it's very fast paced. And I think an important skill as a lawyer is to kind of learn to go with the flow to a certain extent. Like in court, things will happen that you're not fully prepared for. You should be as prepared as possible, but you know, you have to be prepared for the unexpected and just be able to roll with it. And also understand that like things that opposing counsel say to you don't really matter. I know when I first started out, there's a lot of condescension, and you just have to let things roll off your back and not let them get to you, because it's not personal at the end of the day. Like my job is more than a job to me, but you know, it's for landlords attorneys specifically, it really is just they're trying to collect money for their client, right? And it doesn't matter at the end of the day, whatever insulting stuff they say.
Thank you guys for those tips. I'll definitely need them when I'm out of law school. But I guess I would talk to like the skills in law school, although I think everyone knows that law school sucks. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It's tough. Law school is really tough. But I think definitely being organized, having good time management is something that you definitely need, because it could get out of hand very, very quickly, very easily. But even that, just being kind to yourself, you have to, you know, give yourself grace and understand that this is tough, especially when we know that law school wasn't made for people like us, you know, women who look like us. So like, it's no wonder that it's so hard. And on top of that, I think a good skill is, you know, having your communication, being able to talk and ask for help when you need it, something that you definitely need when you're in law school, because that's, you know, asking for help is I used to think that asking for help made you seem like you were weak or something, like you didn't know what you were doing. And so that was something that I had to really work on a lot. And I have to ask my friends all the time. All my friends are here supporting me, and I ask them for help all the time. And it's something that you definitely need. And I think that's the number one skill.
Awesome. I think for me, it's been really listening to clients and understanding their needs. And I think it's kind of like what she said was, you have to be honest. Like, you just have to be upfront, even if it's something they don't want to hear. You have to say it to them. It can be the most uncomfortable truth, but at least you know you're being upfront. Another thing I can relate to with I think it's Priam. It's with regards to some of the, you know, side comments people say. In my case, I used to do a lot of depositions, and I used to have people always think I was the court reporter initially, and that is ridiculous. You're like, oh, I'm in this suit, that's fine. But no, they just sometimes they're not used to seeing people like us in that space. And you know, initially it used to really bother me, and now I kind of just learned to take up my space in that area. And it's, you know, it's definitely taking a lot of conversation with, you know, myself, and you know, just understanding like, hey, you deserve to be here as much as they deserve to be here. You work just as hard to get here as they did. So it's just having the confidence in yourself, but it takes time.
I was actually going to say that I've been confused for a secretary for no reason, right? Other than I can think of for being a young woman of color. Like, that's the only reason for it. But yeah, it happens, and you just have to learn that it doesn't matter.
Yeah, these are all really real stories, and thank you all for being really vulnerable and opening up and sharing these. I saw a question in the chat from Cindy. As attorneys / law student, how do you maintain a work-life balance?
So I guess I'll go again. That is the hardest part of all of this. And I have 2 young kids, a wonderful husband that picks up my slack because I'm a business owner. And so I have 3 babies, 2 kids, and my office, which is, it's grueling and it's hard. So for the first couple of years, it was such a difficult task, because as you're building a practice, you answer every call, you give everyone the cell phone number, you answer every email when it comes in, and it's a struggle. It still is, but I make a conscious effort I work out. I make sure that I take me time. All of the cliche things I do. I meditate, I journal, I work out, and I honestly try to turn work off when I get home so that when I'm home, I'm with my kids and I'm able to be mom. If there's an emergency, people know how to reach me. But it's one of the hardest things that you'll have to do, I think, as a lawyer or any profession, as a woman. It's extremely difficult to figure that balance out. I think it's also a personal journey that I'm still working on it. But your mental health comes first. And the last couple of years with COVID have been very, very trying on all of us, I would assume. So keep it up, keep working hard. That's all I can say. It's a journey.
Yeah, I agree with everything Vrinda said. I will say it's really difficult when you're dealing with, clients who are in dire situations. Like I've had clients be evicted, not too many, fortunately, but it's happened, right? I almost feel guilty compartmentalizing because it's, I'm just going home to my warm apartment and they were just evicted, and at the end of the day, though, you do need to take care of yourself, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't serve others, right? And also, me not taking care of myself isn't going to, unfortunately, put this person back in their home, So compartmentalizing, I feel like it's like a little bit of a dirty word, and it kind of sounds like, you don't care about the cause in general, like the movement in general, but also like your individual clients. But it's actually, I think, something important that you need to do, and it's not a bad thing. Like I'm always there for emergencies and I'm always accessible, but I can't return every call right away. And it's just, unfortunately, I'm a human. Well, not unfortunately, I am a human, and I just need to take time for myself, and I think that's fine, and that's good and healthy.
Yeah, law school, it's definitely hard, as you guys know. So what I like to do is, I know it's a little crazy, but I will schedule in my fun time. So I will schedule in and block out, like, here, I'll show you guys right here. This is my big ass planner, and that's where I do it because I know I need me time. I know I need to relax. I know I need to take time to go hang out with my friends or take time to go on a date with my boyfriend. And so I will plan those things, and even little things like do my nails for like 30 minutes before class starts. So it's the little things that will help you, because you can't be 24 hours reading, writing, watching case, doing all this stuff, watching your classes. Like, it's just not going to work. You're going to get burnt out, and so you need that me time. And so the balance is hard. Like, I think people, as you can tell, like attorneys with businesses, they're still trying to find that balance. So I think as long as you try, you'll do it. Like, you'll be able to read your cases for LEDP and be able to like get a margarita after class. Like, you could do it. It's definitely possible, but you definitely have to be on top of it. And even if it doesn't work out the way you want to, it's okay. Like, give yourself grace. If you need to cry, if you need to schedule some time to cry, because I definitely do that with my friends here in the Zoom chat. Sometimes that's what you got to do too. And then you just got to pick yourself up and keep it moving.
For me, it's a good question. I do vacations. I'm a big vacation person. So when I go on vacation, I go all out. I try to. It's weird, when I really started focusing on building this company and building my practice, my husband and I, we had just been newly engaged, and we had to take in our 5 nieces and nephews. So we had to end up without taking them in. And it was such a new experience. And I really had to learn how to separate work from home. So being, a lawyer, during the day, and then being mom at night, or being auntie at night, And what I do is I've had to learn to turn off my phone after a certain time. Like, I just do not check certain emails after 7:30 or 8 p.m. After that, I'm fully engaged in my family. I try to be, at least. But vacations is a really big part. Once a month, I do spa days. I try to do that. I just do things that help me. I try to go on walks that also helps as well. So those are the few things I do.
Awesome. Yeah, it is a journey. And I feel like it's constantly evolving based on you and what your needs are at a certain point in your life. So totally agree with all of those. Just a flag for time. So we're currently at about 7:10. So we have about 15 minutes or so left. So definitely keep the questions coming. But I will go ahead and ask another one. So this one is talking a little bit about what a typical workday looks like for you. And I know some of you had mentioned it during your brief bio, but if there are other things that you want to share, I think folks are interested in learning more about like your specific career choices and like what you do on a day-to-day basis. So feel free to go as in depth or as brief as you want to with this question. Yeah, I'll pass it to all of you.
I mean, God, a typical day. So I'm just going to focus on work, not my kids. But I mean, every day is slightly different. But I work Monday through Thursday, and I try to take Fridays off, and I work Saturday again. Every Saturday, it's my busy day. So during the week, I could be at immigration. I meet with clients all day long. I spend a significant portion of my day returning calls, finalizing cases, and I do have help. I have 2 paralegals, and they do a lot of work. And I finalize everything personally that leaves my office. There's not a case that leaves my office that I don't review, scan in, sign off on it, and I literally take it to the post office myself. So I think somebody said organization. I am a little crazy, but these are my clients' lives, and I take it seriously, and my days are very busy, and I am at work to work during those business hours, and that is all I do. And then again, when I leave, I try to turn work off as best as I can. But I meet with a lot of clients. I hear a lot of really sad stories and sad experiences, and it's hard, and it's tough, but we try to figure out ways to help my different clients and be helpful to them. So that's a typical day, I guess. Every day is a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for me, there is no typical day. Certainly, my typical day has also been affected by the pandemic, because pretty much every court appearance right now in housing court is remote. So whereas I'd physically be in court probably 3 or 4 days a week, now I still am in court a lot, but it's on Microsoft Teams court. So that's very different. But in terms of okay, so as a supervisory attorney, which I became a supervisor about 1.5 years ago, my day-to-day is a little bit different than when I was a staff attorney. So now it's, I do still have some cases from when I was a staff attorney, and I get some new cases as well, but they're fewer and farther between. So most of what I'm doing is talking to the people I supervise. I supervise 4 people. When I first started, 3 of them were law graduates, and only 1 was an admitted attorney, meaning that I have to review everything they wrote and sign off on it. And anytime they had a court appearance, I'd have to accompany them, which admittedly was made easier because it was Microsoft Teams versus physically going with them to court. But as a staff attorney in my office, I mean, I think there's even more differentiation like between each day, because some days, we would be doing intakes with new clients. We would actually get referrals from court directly. So we would be doing intakes in the hallways of the courthouse as well as in a courthouse office. So that was really hectic. And, you'd be on intake maybe 3 or 4 times a month. Some days you'd be doing motion practice. So you'd be working on like a motion to dismiss the case or a motion for summary judgment. And that would be the main thing you're doing that day. Some days would be taken up by client meetings. Some days you'd be arguing a motion. Occasionally, when I was a staff attorney, at the same office, the only place I've ever worked, Queens Legal Services, as a staff attorney there for 6 years. And during that time, I had 7 trials, which doesn't sound like a lot, but actually most cases don't go to trial. So that's quite a bit. So every day would look different. It would kind of just depend on, what was happening with my cases at that time. Some days, you know, we would take walk-in clients. Right now, people aren't getting evicted. Unfortunately, that's going to start up again soon, probably. But, you know, we could take walk-in clients, so sometimes somebody would walk in who's going to be evicted the next day. So we'd have to put in an emergency application with the court and scramble to do that. So it varies. It really varies at my job. Yeah.
Well, a typical day, I guess, for a law student at Zoom School of Law is that I wake up, I eat breakfast, and then I hop on to class. Literally, I usually have either 1 to 2 classes a day, and they're usually like 2 hours each. So I'm just on class. I have my little iPad where I take my notes. We do not like Zoom School of Law. I take my notes. I try to, in between classes, I'll make lunch, clean up a little, watch some TV. I try to not start work until like the nighttime. I'm a night owl, so like during the day I'll just like relax. If I have to read before, like if I haven't read for the class later in my day, I'll like read there. But it's very light work. I don't do the heavy stuff until night. I try to make sure that I have some dinner ready. And then after that, I will like hop on Zoom with my friends and we'll be working till like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. Working on our stuff, readings, writing our memos. That's how usually it looks. Except when I have my teaching, because when I'm a teaching assistant, I do go into school. So I wake up a little bit earlier and head on to school where I sit down with my class. I'm a teaching assistant for the first year criminal law class at CUNY Law. So it's a really awesome class and I love criminal law. So it's just great to be in person in that sense because I get to see my old criminal law professor like in her glory teaching us criminal law. So that's the only time where I get to go in person. So I do get a little taste of that. But yeah, besides that, if I'm not sleeping or eating, I am reading for class. That's law school for you.
I don't miss law school. Law school was rough, especially that first year was a lot. As for me, thankfully, my office is right around the corner from my house, so that's nice. So I normally get into the office around 8:30. I have normally like a 15-minute meeting with my legal assistant. We just go over what she should be doing during the day. And then I normally hop onto Microsoft Teams and I do an appearance, maybe a deposition, or I do a court appearance, a motion, things of that nature. Then by the afternoon, I am normally working on BOK creative filings. So I'm doing LLCs, operating agreements, trademarks, things of that nature. And then around 4 or 5 is when I have my consultations. So that's when those are normally when it's booked. I normally have about 2 a day and I'm on the phone speaking with people. COVID has definitely changed the way I do things. Normally in a day, I'd be going to different courthouses in different, boroughs, but thankfully I can do everything from right here. So that's wonderful. But, and then I probably leave the office around 7 o'clock and then just go home and watch Netflix or something.
Awesome. Great. And then I see we have another question in the chat. So Reachelle, I know that you also worked at the door, so you can definitely answer this too. But yeah, it's what was your first client like? So I guess we could take it back for some of you, quite a few years if you can remember all the way back. But yeah, so I'll just throw it to whoever wants to go.
I don't know if we want my very first client that ever walked in the office because that wasn't a good experience, but in my head, it's like one of my really good first clients that trusted this brand new lawyer to help them. So we're not going to talk about the guy that said I looked too young and didn't know what I was doing. We're not going to talk about him who ended up hiring me and I won his case, but still. So we as women, and I'll take it as a compliment these days when people say I look too young to practice. I'm like, okay, but it's hard because you're not just a female of color, but you're also fresh out of law school, figuring it all out. I had some clients come in and they're still she's a very good client. she took a chance on me for her immigration case, and we won the case, and I'll never forget her. You know, still a great client, still calls to check on me. So you have some great clients that you'll never forget. And I've had to grow and change over the years. I've had to get more assertive. But I remember all my very first clients. I think that very first year that I opened my office, I can remember their cases and their names, and what I've done for them over the years. I honestly can remember those things. So, you know, it's a journey especially when you're a solo practitioner. I think you get to know your clients on a really, I don't know, on a very deep level, I'm sure. But I connect with them, and I maintain, I think, friendships after the fact. But it's a very family vibe in my office. That's the way I like to think of it, is you know, we're all from the same culture and community, and so we try to keep it very simple in my office.
So it's kind of funny because Vrinda said she wasn't going to talk about, you know, this client who said that she was too young, and I'm actually going to talk about a client like that. I'm not sure if she was my very first client, but she was probably my second or third client. But I was assigned, her case was actually transferred to me from another attorney who was leaving the office to go to our Brooklyn office. We have 5 different offices. Actually, well, we have offices in each borough. I'll just leave it at that instead of going into the structure of my org. But anyway, so, you know, her case is being transferred from a lawyer that she'd already connected with and who she loved. And, you know, when I started speaking to her, she said that, you know, I seemed really young and nervous. And she asked me actually when I graduated from law school, and I was honest. And I said, well, I graduated this year. And, you know, I actually am not technically a lawyer yet. I passed the bar exam, but I'm waiting to get admitted. So she called up my supervisor and actually asked for a different attorney to be assigned to the case. But, you know, ultimately, it ended up being a very fruitful, collaborative relationship. I spent hours with her. She lived in the New York City Housing Authority, and she was being overcharged for her rent. So we spent hours going through, you know, rent receipts from various months and income documents from various family members. And I filed an appeal on her behalf, which, well, unfortunately we lost, but, you know, at the end, she said that I'd grown a lot and that she really respected me. And she actually had another housing court case, and she specifically requested me. So, you know, it all worked out. And when you first start off as a lawyer, I mean, there are people who are jerks and are going to say things like, somebody was like, do you know what that means about like a legal term? But also, you know, there is like a little bit of, I don't want to say truth there, but, you know, you have to have a little humility and realize, you know, I actually don't know that much, and I understand my client's concerns, and, you know, just be willing to collaborate and work and learn.
Yeah, so my very first client, well, I had never done any legal work or done anything. So it was crazy because I had started at the door and I was working with my supervising attorney, and she had just got a batch of SITC cases. And the first one, right? The first one when I was there was an emergency SITC case, because for SITC cases, you have to do all the paperwork before the client turns 21. And this client specifically was about to turn 21 in 2 weeks. So she just threw me right into the fire and said, we got to do this. Like, are you ready? And I was like, well, okay. So I wrote a motion to show order, a motion to show cause, a affidavit. I've never done that in my life except when I was in my lawyering seminar. I did an intake, and I've never done that in my life. And it was, I mean, she taught me, it's like, she guided me through the whole way. And usually SITC cases will take 2 to 3 months to get all the paperwork done to send to the family court to get the SITC status. I did it in like 4 days, like all the paperwork. I did all the intake, I did the writing, wrote the motion with my supervising attorney, and and it was great. It was like the best experience I've ever had in my life. And it was my first client too. And so we did everything quick. And it turns out we had scheduled the family hearing. It was an emergency. We had to schedule it. And they gave it to us the day before she turned 21. So we had to do quick. Like, I think we had the time for 12 p.m. and my supervising attorney was like, "You live in Queens, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And I had to go all the way to her uncle's like shop, his job. And I sat down with her and we did the entire family court hearing like from my laptop. And as soon as I was done, I got her to sign all the paperwork. I went all the way back to the door and we signed everything and were able to drop it off and in the mail by 5 o'clock that day. So by the time it went there, it was like overnight shipping. Like we got it right on time. So it was a wild experience, but you know, all the motions got granted. She got her STIG visa, like everything's good. So like even my supervising attorney updated me and told me like that, like she sent it to the immigration services and it was great. Like everything worked. So it was a wild experience because I did everything so quick and I have never done anything like that. But it was also my first case and everything was successful, you know. So it was an interesting experience. And after that, I had a few more cases about the same thing, but it wasn't as urgent as those. So I'll always remember her. Like it's always gonna be my first case because, you know, it was so fast. I had never done anything like that. I remember telling all my friends, like, I'm like writing 30-page motions and I've never done this in my life. I've never written an affidavit except when we did it in class. So I was just using my schoolwork to like, well, I guess this is what an affidavit looks like. So let me just, and my supervisor was like, "This is amazing. This is incredible." I was like, "This is the best affidavit I've ever written." I was like, "Oh, okay, thank you." So yeah, I'm always gonna remember my first client.
Wow. Well, I mean, my first client was random. It was just someone in the neighborhood that I grew up in. Their son got in trouble. I think it was like a DUI. And she just wanted someone to show up for the appearance. And initially I was like, no, I'm not doing it. But my mother was she almost made me do it, I feel like. But I went, and I did have experience working for a criminal defense attorney prior to as an internship. That's the one thing about law school. I did a ton of internships throughout. I think I did about 4 or 5 different type of experiences, which was great. But I was very nervous, and it was my first time, before, in court by myself. And I was able to get an ACD, an adjournment contemplation of dismissal. And he was happy, everyone was happy. And it was a really unexpected, I don't know, it made me feel better about the path I chose. But it was really a random experience.
Great. I can't believe the hour just went by like that. But I think the last question is always one that I say for panels like these. What advice do you have for folks that are interested in this field? And it can be anything, things that you maybe have mentioned before. I want to, detail a little bit more on something that you didn't get a chance to share, but you found very helpful in your own journey. So just any general advice that you have for people. So yeah, go ahead.
I think it's easy to just sort of want to throw in the towel and maybe give up on your dreams sometimes when it's hard. And I always say to the young ladies that work with me, who all want to be lawyers, and one just went off to law school, so I'm so proud. But I remember when I first started my practice and I would sit in the office and watch Netflix, and it was a journey. And I used to do a lot of networking, and I would be out there grinding, and I wouldn't be with my babies, and I just kept fighting and working hard. And again, I was honest, and I never gave up on the vision that I've had. And I love helping the people that I get to help and the people that trust me to help them. And so I think my best advice is just do not give up on your dream. If you have a dream, whether it's to become a lawyer or whatever it is, there were many, many days I wanted to quit, or, especially during COVID, that was very difficult being an immigration lawyer during COVID, when most of my clientele have no idea how to use the internet. So when everyone said virtual, like that was impossible for me and my clientele. And it's a document heavy field. And so there were days where I was like, ugh, maybe I should just get a job. Maybe I should throw in the towel. But I love what I do and I wouldn't trade it. And it's the hardest, but the most rewarding thing I've ever done. So I guess that's my advice, is just if you want it, go get it. That's the only advice I can give.
I'm going to give advice that's pretty similar to Vrinda's. When you first start practicing, you're really not going to necessarily know what you're doing, and that's okay. There's a learning curve, and sometimes my supervisor, even though I actually interned at the org I ended up working at, sometimes my supervisor would say things and they'd go completely over my head, and I thought maybe I was just stupid. But like one time I asked her a question, I was really hesitant to ask her the question because I was like, I should know this, and she's like, no, thank you for asking. It's my fault. I just kind of forget that people don't know everything when they first start. And she told me it took me about a year to actually fully understand what I was doing and understand, because it's like a lot of procedure and just like understanding the court process is really difficult in and of itself. And you can learn it in law school, but at least for me, you learn by doing. So just don't get discouraged or feel stupid if you don't know what you're doing right away, because you won't. And a lot of knowing whether you're getting a good deal or not just comes from experience. Unfortunately, there's no replacement for experience. And also, I would say I personally, like, the word networking makes me really nervous and gives me hives, just because it sounds like a little disingenuous, but just being comfortable reaching out to people and contacts you have, because that really is a large part of the way people get jobs, and that's been a large part of the way how I ended up where I am. So, not being nervous about doing that or feeling like you're bothering people. And not everybody's going to answer you, but some people will, and some people will remember you fondly, and some of it will be fruitful. So.
Yeah, I definitely want to just piggyback off what Priam and Vindra said. I think working hard and making sure that it's a goal that you have and a dream that you have. I think law school is so hard that if you don't really want to do it, I don't think there's a point for you to be there, in the sense that it's something that you really have to want. And you can't give up on your dream just because it's hard, because it is hard. It's really, really hard. And so I like to say, I love watching Finding Nemo. So my favorite advice, just keep swimming. I think that's such a cute thing and such a powerful thing, because it's just gotta keep going, and you gotta keep going there, and I think about it in the sense of my future clients, they're waiting for me to graduate. They're waiting for me to pass the freaking bar and go be a badass attorney and go help them. So that's my motivation there, to just get through it and just not give up, because there's people out there waiting for me, so that's definitely my advice. Just keep your eye on the prize.
I guess my advice is similar. I mean, if it's something you want to do, I always say accept that it's hard. Just accept it. You're going to have some bumps in the road. If you're doing it right, it's going to feel sometimes really difficult. But for me, I can't speak for everyone. I know there's nothing else I want to be. I love my career. Absolutely love it. There's no place I'd rather be. I love that I have my own office. I appreciate the clients I do have, even after all these years. Every new client, I still appreciate they put their trust in me. And I have to respect that. And I want to work as hard for them as that first client I had. But it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. It's definitely, for me, I can say it was worth it. So just keep going. Also, I agree, networking, that word is triggering to me at times. I remember all the networking events I went to the first 2 years. Now I've kind of worked on creating relationships with people. So some people I naturally flow with, some people I don't. If we have something in common, I try to, we work towards that, or we have a common goal, that's great. But it's just taking that step to get to know someone. Networking doesn't always mean that you're just saying initially, oh, I'm a lawyer. Sometimes it's just finding something that you have a common goal in. I know my first initial networking thing was doing dodgeball tournaments. Like the first year, I love dodgeball. But that's how I was actually able to get a lot of clients too at one point, with just doing things I like doing. So, don't always go to networking events, but try to find things that you actually like doing.
Awesome. So we are a little over time, but I want to thank all of our panelists for giving us their time tonight. I know it's a Thursday night, but thank you so much for being here, sharing your experiences and advice for everyone that's interested in this field. Also, for all of our attendees, thank you all so much. This is just the beginning of our mentorship series. So every month we'll have a different panel focused on a different sector. So if you are interested, or you just want to meet new people and learn about different career perspectives, like, please feel free to attend any of these panels. But thank you all so much. And I hope you stay safe and well. And panelists, if I could just keep you for like another minute. Thank you all so much. Yeah, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I thought that went